The Justice Art SCPA Collaborative was born out of a desire to express the heightened concerns and heavy hearts that burn with the divisive and volatile words and actions that have seemed overwhelming, that also spark gorgeous amounts of outpouring and passions of goodwill, hope, charity, and love across our nation. The collaborative's common language of expression is through the arts. Although most events contain fine art performance, we were led to begin with a time of reading the names of people whose lives have been cut down before their time. This reading, this moment of time of silence, is to remember and honor them. Each name that is read is about a life with purpose. Someone loved them. Someone thought they mattered before we were introduced to them. As they lived their lives, they probably never thought that part of their purpose would lead us to a time that would cause people to pause in their lives, to desire to do more. With that said, we would like to invite you to join us as we take this time to say their names.
Makia Bryant, Matthew Zodok Williams, Dante Wright, James Lionel Johnson, Dominique Williams,
Marvin Scott III, Patrick Warren, Xavier Hill, Robert Howard,
Vincent Belmont,
Benny Edwards,
Casey Goodson Jr., Aiden Ellison, Quan Bobby Charles,
Kevin Peterson Jr., Walter Wallace Jr., Jonathan Price, Kurt Reinhold, Dejan Kizzy,
Damian Daniels, Anthony McLean,
Julian Lewis, Maurice Abistid Wagner,
Ray Shardbrooks,
Priscilla Slater,
Robert Forbes,
Kamal Flowers, Jamel Floyd,
David McAtee,
James Skurlock, Calvin Horton Jr., Tony McDade, Dion Johnson, George Perry Floyd.
Maurice Gordon. Cornelius Fredericks. Stephen Taylor. Daniel Prude. Drishan Sean Reed.
Michael Brent Charles Ramos. Brianna Taylor. Barry Geddes. Manuel Manny Elijah Ellis. Ahmaud Aubrey.
Lionel Morris. Jaquan O'Neill Light. William Green. Darius Tarver. Mackay Lee.
John Neville.
Michael Dean.
Tatiana Jefferson. Byron Williams.
Elijah McLean. Jaleel Medlock. T.T. Gully.
Dominique Clayton.
Pamela Turner. Ronald Green.
Sterling Higgins. Bradley Blackshire. Jasmine McBride. Aaliyah Jenkins. Emantic E.J. Fitzgerald Bradford Jr.
Jamel Robertson.
Charles Chop Roundtree Jr. Chinedu Okobi. Botham Shem Jean. Harith Augustus.
Jason Washington. Antoine Rose Jr. Robert White. Earl McNeil. Marcus David Peters.
Dorian Harris. Danny Ray Thomas. Sahid Bassel. Stefan Alonzo Clark. Ronell Foster.
Aaron Bailey, Damon Grimes, James Lacey, Charlena Siobhan Lyles, Mikkel McIntyre,
Jordan Edwards, Timothy Kaufman, Alteria Woods, Desmond Phillips, Chad Robertson,
Deborah Danner,
Alfred Olango, Terrence Crutcher, Terrence Liddell Sterling, Christian Taylor,
Jamarian Robertson, Corin Gaines, Donnell Thompson Jr., Joseph Curtis Mann, Philando Castile,
Alton Sterling, Jay Anderson Jr., Shay Taylor, David Joseph, Anthony Scott,
Betty Boo Jones, Kentonio LeGrier, Jamar O'Neill Clark, Corey Lamar Jones, Jeremy Bam Bam McDowell,
India Kager,
Samuel Vincent DuBose, Darius Stewart, Sandra Bland, Susie Jackson,
Daniel Simmons, Ethel Lance, Myra Thompson, Cynthia Hurd, DePayne Middleton Doctor,
Sharonda Coleman Singleton,
Clementa Pinckney, Tywanza Sanders, Khalif Browder, Brendan K. Glenn, Freddie Carlos Gray Jr., Norman Cooper. Walter Lamar Scott. Eric Courtney Harris. Philip Gregory White.
Maya Shawatsa Hall. Megan Hockaday. Tony Terrell Robinson Jr. Shanisha Fonville. Natasha McKenney.
Rumaine Brisbane. Jeremy C. Reed. Tamir Rice. Akai Kareem Gurley. Tanisha N. Anderson.
Laquan McDonald. Cameron Tillman. Darian Hunt. Hajim Powell. Michelle Kusaks.
Dante Parker. Azil Ford. Michael Brown Jr. Amir Brooks. John Crawford III.
Eric Garner. Jerry Dwight Brown. Dontre Hamilton. Victor White III. Gabriela Monique Navarez.
Marquise Jones. Yvette Smith. Mackenzie J. Cochran. Jordan Baker. Renisha McBride. Andy Lopez. Miriam Iris Carey. Barrington B.J. Williams. Jonathan Farrell. Carlos Alcis. Larry Eugene Jackson Jr.
Kian Livingston. Dion Flood. Gabrielle Windsor. Wayne A. Jones.
Clinton R. Allen. Kimani Kiki Gray. Kayla Moore, Corey Stingley, Jamal Moore, Sr.,
Shelley Marie Frey, Darnisha Deanna Harris, Timothy Russell, Melissa Williams, Jordan Davis,
Noel Polanco, Mohammed Ba, Reynaldo Cuevas, Chavez Carter, Alicia Thomas,
Sergeant James Brown, Chantel Davis, Darius Simmons, Charmel T. Edwards, Taman Robinson,
Irvin Lee Jefferson III, Kendrick McDade, Rikia Boyd, Sharice Francis, Jersey K. Green, Wendell James Allen, Nehemiah Lazar Dillard, Dante Lamar Price, Raymond Luther Allen Jr., Manuel Levy Loggins Jr.,
Johnny Kamahi Warren, Trayvon Martin, Ramarley Graham, Willie Ray Banks, Kenneth Chamberlain Sr.,
Cletus Williams, Alonzo Ashley, Derek Williams, Robert Ricks, Raheem Brown Jr.,
Reginald Doucet, Eugene Ellison, Derek Jones, Don Roy DJ Henry Jr., Anya Monet Stanley Jones,
Stephen Eugene Washington, Lawrence Allen, Aaron Campbell, Oscar Grant. Julian Alexander.
Kiwani Carrington. Victor Steen. Shem Walker. Oscar Grant III. Marvin Parker.
Tarika Wilson. Deonta Terrell Farrow. Sean Bell. Catherine Johnston. Ronald Curtis Madison.
James Brissett, Jr.
Henry Ace Glover. Timothy Stansbury, Jr. Usmain Songo. Alberta Spruill.
Kendra Sari James. Orlando Barlow. Timothy Dwayne Thomas Jr. Anthony Dwayne Lee. Ronald Beasley.
Earl Murray. Patrick Moses Dorismond. Prince Carmen Jones, Jr. Malcolm Ferguson. Ricky Birdsong.
Latanya Haggerty. Margaret Laverne Mitchell. Amadou Diallo. Taisha Shanae Miller. James Bird Jr.
Danette Daniels. Frankie Ann Perkins. Nicholas Hayward, Jr. Mary Mitchell. Yvonne Smallwood.
Sharon Walker.
Eleanor Bumpers. Michael Jerome Stewart.
Ula May Love. Arthur Miller, Jr.
Randolph Evans, Barry Jean Evans, Edward Gardner, Rita Lloyd, Elton Hayes,
Fred Hampton, Henry Dumas, Martin Luther King Jr., Alberta Odell Jones, Jimmy Lee Jackson,
Malcolm X, James Earl Cheney, Lewis Allen, Medgar Evers, Herbert Lee,
John Earl Reese, Emmett Till, William McDuffie, Delia McDuffie, Malcolm Wright, George Stinney Jr.,
Dr. Andrew C. Jackson, Will Brown, Levi Harrington.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We would like to invite you to view the collaborative's video and also consider submitting your own creation that expresses your feelings regarding justice, injustice, and your experience to the Justice Art SCPA website. Thank you so much for joining us and have a good night.